The blessing. That's the title of the message, and it would be the title of our past 20 years. From the very beginning, God has called us to this mission, to love God with all that we are while making more and better followers of Christ. At the beginning of the service, I prayed the Aaronic blessing, the same blessing that I pray every week at the conclusion of the service, at the benediction. That word, by the way, benediction, bena, means good, diction, word, the good word. And this specific blessing was given by God to Moses to have Aaron and the high priest to pray over the people. It was the method by which God chose to bless the people. And today I want us to look a little bit more closely at that blessing and a little bit more closely at those words and have a little deeper and richer understanding of what it is that we're praying. And then I want to share our story with you. This blessing starts off, as you well know, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you. This is found in Numbers chapter 6, verse 24. And as I've shared before, the high priest would stand before the people, and he would actually put his hands in kind of this configuration. Kind of like you've seen Mr. Spock say, live long and prosperous. Well, he was Jewish. That's where he got that from, was from seeing the priest use this blessing. And so he kind of used that, made his own method of it. But this is what the priest would pray, and he would pray it over the people each day. And this is how God instructed him to pray. And he would say, may the Lord, that word is actually Yahweh. Now, the Jews would use the word Adonai, Father, there, because most of them would not speak the word of Yahweh unless they were a priest. And there's a lot of debate when and how often that name got spoken. And by the way, we're not even really sure how to pronounce it, but don't let that bother you. But with that said, the Lord, may the Lord bless you. That word blessing, barak, blessing, is a rich and powerful word. And what it literally means is this. It means to empower you, to encourage you. I want to give you the strength, the power, the ability, the opportunity. Not just I'm going to give you stuff, not just I'm going to make you feel better, but I want to use you for the purpose for which you were created. And so I am blessing you. I am empowering you. And as we look at that word bless, we kind of have a picture here that I think helps us understand it. This is Alicia Worley, who is our children's minister over at Parker Square. And she's working with a child here, but notice she's on her knees because that word literally means to kneel. Now, you might be thinking, what does that mean? Why would God be kneeling before us? It's not so much that he's kneeling before us as he's kneeling with us in order to look us in the eye, in order to be exactly where we are, to see our heart, to see our eyes, and us to see him, to know that he is in fact with us. He's empowering, he's encouraging, he is working, he is barak. May the Lord encourage you, empower you. May he bless you, and may he keep you. There's that word keep. It's the same word that God used in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, when he told actually chapter 1, when he told Adam that he wanted him to keep the garden. I want you to be responsible. I want you to keep it. Shagar is the word that is used there. And shagar means this. It means not only just guard, but also to pay careful attention, to pay close attention. You notice how that security worker, Guy Shimabuku, is paying attention, to pay careful attention to what is before you, to what is around you. That's what God is promising to the nation of Israel. And I believe that we can also get in on that promise today as Gentiles who have been grafted into the kingdom. And as we pray this, and as God speaks these words, he's saying, I not only am guarding, but I am doing more. I am paying careful attention to your life. I see where you are. I see you. I know your heart. I know your pains. I know your thoughts. I am right here with you. Barak Shagar. I am keeping you. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you. Panim is the Hebrew word here. And you see the face there. You see the glowing face. That's Tino, our college minister. And as he is letting that face shine, so to speak, that light shine, the picture there is the illumination of the heart of God, the joy of God as he delights in his children, as he illuminates their life. And when we are in intimacy, when we are in closeness to God Almighty, he is illuminating our heart and our path, and he has promised to bring light into the darkness. He has promised to bring understanding into the confusion. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you. May he be gracious to you. That word gracious literally means active compassion, active kindness. You see, this is from Feed the Hunger. That's something that we do every year. We'll do somewhere around 200 to 250,000 meals. Some will stay here, some will go overseas, wherever the need might be. But we come and we pack those meals, and it is active kindness. It is graciousness. Hanan is the Hebrew word there. And that is exactly what God has demonstrated to us. That's what he's promised us, that he's not just kind, he's actively kind. He's actively compassionate. He's actively good. So may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the countenance of the Lord fall upon you. Now that word panim is used here again, the face, but this time it is with the understanding, and it's used in the tense of favor. He's giving favor to us. In other words, he's giving us preference. He's given us more than kindness. He's giving us what we don't deserve. He's giving us his spirit. He's giving us his guidance. He's giving us his heart. And it's a picture of his readiness to help, his willingness and his excitement to minister, to help us, to meet our needs. It's such a beautiful picture. And so we see this picture here of two of our members. One is excited to receive. That's the picture. Here's the way I really would explain this. You know, my son Brock is here today. And I remember when he was old enough and he was finally ready to play ball. And he said, "Dad, will you teach me how to throw?" And I go, "Yes, I will teach you how to throw a ball. Like, I've been waiting for this moment. I've been waiting for this all my life, okay?" And that's the heart and the Spirit of God in his excitement when we say, "God, use me, work in me, work through me." His countenance falls upon us and he grants us shalom. Shalom. Now that's a rich, powerful word. And I wish I could totally explain it to you. I can't. But let me give you a little bit, okay? It's not just the absence of, peace is our word. There are a lot of different words actually that are translated shalom, but that's the one we typically use. But it's not just the absence of conflict. It's so much richer than that. Shalom is like telos in the New Testament, the Greek word for complete. In other words, something is being used to its fullness. It's complete. It's functioning as it should. It is operating according to design, and it is fulfilling its purpose. That's what shalom is. Shalom, God is doing three things. He's redeeming us, he's reconciling us, and he's renewing us. He's redeeming our hurts and even our mistakes from the past. He redeems and he reconciles himself to us continually so that we are in right relationship with him, and then he renews. So often we want things to go back to the way they were, or we long for the good old days. But that's not how God operates. He redeems, he reconciles, and he renews. He gives a new chapter in our lives. He gives us new opportunities for which we are designed, for which he has created, for which we will find purpose when we say, "Yes, Lord," And then we enter into shalom. It doesn't mean we don't hurt. It doesn't mean we don't suffer loss. It doesn't mean that we don't get discouraged or even depressed. But we understand the purpose of God and who he is, and that my purpose is to worship him and to bring him glory. There's a picture here of an individual who is worshiping, who I believe is a great picture of peace, of shalom. And there's another word called tada, or excuse me, yada. Yada means worship. It means hand, but when it's yada, when it's included in this sense of worship, it's worshiping with your hands. So you see that individual with their hands raised, and there's the shalom, that you know you are in the right place at the right time before the true God. When you are in worship, when you are in praise, and we are to live that way through our life. When we are at work, when we're at play, when we're at home, and when we're at worship, we yada. Now, I believe that God has certainly worked through his favor, that he has blessed us, that he has kept us and guarded us and paid close attention to us, that he's made his face to shine upon us, and he's given us empowerment. He's given us enrichment. He's been gracious and kind, and his countenance has fallen upon us and given us so many opportunities to serve. And we have been able to experience the shalom of God. I remember it was 2001, and my wife and I were praying about what God would have for us next. And I remember mentioning to her, what about maybe us planting a church? I'd been thinking about it for a while, but I'd just gotten the nerve to talk to her about it. And I said, what about us planting a church? And she said, you mean like where you go and there's a building and there's lots of people waiting for you? I said, no, probably we go someplace where they need it, but there's no building and there's no people. And she goes, I don't think that's a good idea. And she was putting her makeup on at the time. I said, well, let's just pray about it. So she began to pray, and we began to pray. And over the next 6-7 months, she came to a place where God gave her a peace and gave us both a peace that it was time for us to plant. So I remember taking a church planting course and going through an assessment and evaluation. And as I was going through that evaluation, I remember them saying, hey, look, we want to encourage you to consider going to plant in an area called Lantana. I go, that's great. Where is it? We lived over in the Plano area at that time. And they said, well, it's somewhere over by Argyle. I go, all right, I think I know where Argyle is. I don't think there's much out there, but okay. And so at the time, I was meeting with 10 guys, and a couple of those guys stood up earlier that I was praying with and talking about the process with. And I told them, I said, look, I think we're going to go to Lantana. And they said, well, let us pray for you, and we'll help you any way that we can. So I said, all right, well, we're going to go out there this weekend and look at that place. So my wife and I got in the car, and we drove out to Lantana. And this was in 2001. And at that time, there were probably only 60 or 70 houses, with about 20 of them did people even live in. Now, there were more under construction. And we got out there, and it was one of those deals. It's a housing development, but it was more development than housing. And there just weren't that many people here. And I go, well, okay, well, I'm sure it'll grow. And supposedly that was going to be 15,000 people. And we said, all right. Well, then we looked at the prices of the houses, and we go, oh my goodness, we cannot afford to live here. And I remember feeling frustrated as we drove back home. And I met with that group of guys the next day, and I said, I don't know that we're going to be able to go there. We're probably going to have to find another place. We can't afford to move over there. My wife was just leaving her job, and then I was going to be leaving my job. And we needed our bills to be the same or lower, not more. And so we began to visit, and one of the guys, Ron Moe, who was here at the last service, said, well, let's just pray about it and let's see what God does. Let's just keep moving forward. I said, all right, we'll keep moving forward, but we're going to have to get that house for a whole lot less, and then I'm going to have to sell my house up for a whole lot more than I bought it 3 years ago. And said, well, let's just pray. And then a guy, matter of fact, John, who was in here the last service, he'd just become a believer. John said, well, who are the home builders out there? And I said, well, David Weekley's the primary one. He goes, well, my boss is good friends with David Weekley. Why don't I ask my boss to see if he'll knock a bunch of money off a house for you? I remember thinking, yeah, John, that's a great idea. In my head, I was just thinking, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But John hadn't been a believer very long, so I very convinced. I go, John, thank you so much. That'd be nice. Why don't you talk to your boss about asking David Weekly to knock a lot of money off a house for me? Thank you for doing that. I'm just thinking, whatever. And so, about 3 or 4 days later, I'm driving down the road, and I get a call and said, hold for David Weekly, and I literally ran off the road. And David Weekly's on the other line. He said, I was told that you're trying to start a church out in Lantana, and you wanted to see if there's any way I can help you. What are you asking me for? He's got right to the point. I said, well, Mr. Weekly, I can't afford one of your homes. And so I was just wondering if I could be a chaplain or something. He goes, no, I don't need a chaplain. I've already got a ministry for that. I said, well, if there's anything you could do. And he said, I'll tell you what I'll do for you. He said, you go work the best deal you can, and then I will knock $20,000 off that. And if that'll help, then I'll do that. I go, well, yeah, that might help. That might be great. Well, then I'm thinking, okay, there's still a pretty big gap here. I'm gonna have to sell my house for 30% more than I paid 3 years ago. Well, about that time, 9/11 happened. And I remember my realtor, I was just getting ready to put it on the market, and he goes, we're never gonna be able to sell it for this. Homes just aren't selling right now. He goes, so I said, there's no way I can get 30% more. He goes, I don't know, you can get 10% more. I said, well, we gotta try. So I said, just go ahead and list it this weekend. Once again, I meet with my guys, and they said, well, let's just pray and let's just ask God to do it. I said, okay, we're praying. Sure enough, in 6 days, we got what we asked for it. I got 30% more for our house than we'd paid for it. And now the interest rates are gone down, and our payment is basically what it was in West Carrollton or East Carrollton. God has blessed us. God has made a way. So we moved out just a couple months later. And then I had this big plan on how we were going to reach the community, how my wife and I were going to reach the community. And it really involved a lot of sports and a lot of activities and bounce houses and all these kind of things. I'd written up this thing, had like 25 pages, and this is going to be our strategy. So we do one. It goes great with the 50 people that live there. And I think things were working. I go, okay, hopefully this is going to work out. And after we did that one, the ownership came and said, hey, look, you can't use our property to do that anymore. We're independent, and we're not going to favor any religion or any church, so you won't be able to use our property. You can use your own property. And I was thinking, my property, have you seen my front yard? It's the size of this step right here. And I was just so discouraged. I'm thinking, my goodness, this is the plan we have. We've moved out here, and now that plan, that strategy's been stripped away. About that time, the swimming pool opened, and my wife said, well, I'm going to go up to the swimming pool and see if I can teach swimming lessons and work up there. And I said, that'd be great. We got to get some income in this house. Go do that. And so she goes up there, and about 5 minutes later, she calls me and she goes, you're not going to believe this, but they want me to be the manager. Can you believe that? I said, let me guess. Everybody else is like 15, 16 years old over there. She goes, yeah, except for this one 18-year-old. I think they're going to make him the assistant manager. She said, what do? I go, take it. So she began to work there, and families began to move in. And as they're moving in, I had never imagined she begins to build relationships with people. And matter of fact, it got to where every time a new family would come, this was the only place in Lantana you could come. There was nothing else there other than that pool at that time. And she'd call me on the phone. She goes, there's another family that just came in. Just come on up here and meet them. So okay, I'm on my way. So I'd go, hi, I put like I was coming up there for real, and would meet these families. And so through the swimming pool ministry, we had 14 families come to our church. Isn't it crazy? That was a God and Allison. So Ron, 0, God and Allison, 14. So we walked the neighborhood every night. We would meet people, we'd pray for people, and it didn't take us long to walk the neighborhood back then. And God just began to work. And then the school opened, and we began to have services there. And a matter of fact, 20 years ago today, we did our first service. We did a grand opening there. And then the next week, we had about 80 to 90 folks, counting children and pets and those kind of things. And so we began there, and we only had 40 parking spaces, so we got up to 100 people. I was wondering, why can't we grow anymore? And well, we'd run out of parking, but I wasn't smart enough to realize that. But at the end of that year, with our mission being this, loving God with all that we are while making more and better followers of Christ, we were called the Church at Lantana. And then I walked in one day to the school. I was volunteering over there, and the principal said, where y'all going to next? I go, we're not going anywhere. We're happy here. We're the church at Lantana. We're the only church in Lantana. And he goes, well, you're not staying here because Denton Independent School District, you only get 1 year. I go, 1 year? I go, how much longer we got? He goes, 2 weeks. I said, well, is there any way we can extend that? He goes, you've been really good. You've come up here and mentored and helped these kids, and your wife and people have been up here helping. I'm going to give you 2 extra weeks. Thank you, Mr. Gracious. 4 weeks. 4 weeks to go find another place. Well, we can't use Denton Independent School District, so we looked at LISD, Louisville Independent School District, and the only thing open was Briar Hill Middle School on 407. And I remember thinking, oh, Lord, we can't go there. I mean, that's next to 3 of the larger churches in Denton County. There's the Village, and then there's Crossroads Bible, and there's Valley Creek. And now we came to an area where there wasn't a church, and now we're going right in the middle of churches in a school. But that's what God had for us. And so we now know that we have to change our name. We can't take the church at Lantana to Highland Village. And so we get together, and I have this name in my head. Matter of fact, I remember I told David Glass what it was. I've got this great name. We're going to name the church. And so I'm ready to tell everybody about it. And I tell everybody about it, and it went over like a lead balloon. And so they said, let's look at some other names. And because of my strong leadership ability, we did not even really, I don't think we got any votes. I don't even think David voted for it. And so at that point, we start talking, well, what passage of scriptures? What about Matthew 16? Upon this rock, I'll build my church. And said, yeah, rock. Why don't we name it Rock something? I was thinking, that is not a good idea, because there is a church in our area at the time in Dallas that was getting some really bad publicity with the name Rock in it. And I go, we cannot do this. But again, because of my strong leadership, everybody voted for it. And I voted against it, and everybody else voted for it. And they said, what do we call it? Like RockPointe. I go, okay, RockPointe. So we're looking at RockPointe, and one of our guys looks and said, not available on the website. Well, what if we put a little E on the back of it? Okay, that'll work. So that's how we got the E on the end of RockPointe. So now we're RockPointe Church, moving into Highland Village. We've gone from an elementary school to a middle school. And and so we start to grow, even though sometimes people would grab our signs and take them away. That's another story. I'll tell you at another time. But as we were there, we began to grow. And matter of fact, even before we left, I said, look, church, we've got to find property because we've only got 2 years. This time I asked how long could we stay. And they said, you can stay 2 years but if you have property and a plan, you can stay up to 4. All right. So we got 4 years, guys. We've got to be in a building in 4 years, because after that, the only thing that'd be available school-wise would be in Grapevine or in Coppell. And I don't know if my wife's going to come every Sunday if we go all the way over there. So we've got to find a place. So we're looking. People are calling. People are calling and said, hey, here's a piece of property. And everyone was just way expensive. Matter of fact, I finally just told the congregation, look, just call yourselves, and if they quote us by the square foot, that means we can't afford it, which was pretty much everything in Flower Mound at that time. And so we've saved at this point about $70,000, and we have a 1970 U-Haul truck with everything that we own in the back of it. So we're looking, and nothing's happening. We look at different municipalities, different little communities around here, South Denton, Argyle, Copper Canyon, all these different places, and everything just keeps falling through. Nothing is working. And I remember it's been about 18 months, and one day I'm driving down 1171, and I said, God, you've got to do something. I don't know that our church will survive if we have to go to Coppell or Grapevine. And I saw a sign that I probably had driven by 100 times, but because now I'm desperate, I'm willing to call and do anything. And so I see a sign that says J&K Ranch. So I call that number. Lady gets on the phone. I said, ma'am, I noticed you have property for sale. Just wanted to see if you would be willing to sell it to me. And she said, well, how much acreage are you looking for? I said, 8, 9, 10 acres, depending on how much you're asking. She said, well, I have 360 acres and I don't want to divide any of it. I said, is there no way you do it? She said, nope. People ask me every day, and I told them, no, we're just going to sell it all as one piece. I said, well, ma'am, would you introduce me to your neighbors? Ruth Brox, who's a real estate attorney who's here today, had told me, if you ever get that far, ask them if they'll introduce you to their neighbors. And I said, okay. So I'm asking, will you introduce me to your neighbors? She goes, I don't know any of the people down there. I live in Missouri. I inherited the property. I just want to sell it all as one piece. I said, well, ma'am, I'm a pastor. I'm going to give you my number. Would you please take my number? And I'm going to pray that you change your mind. She kind of chuckled and she said, you know what? My husband just happens to be down there today. He's just there for a few hours, then he's coming right back to Missouri. He's just looking over the property. Why don't you go out and see if you can find him? He'll be in a white pickup and a big cowboy hat. He's about 6'4". You won't be able to miss him. And he'll be standing over in one of those fields out there because I just talked to him. I said, all right. So I drove around about 1.5 miles from here. There's a housing division back there now, but there weren't any houses back then. Liberty Elementary didn't even exist back then. And I found him. And sure enough, he looked like Big Tech standing out in the field there, looking at old tractor. And I pulled up and I said, Mr. Bunn, my name's Ron Holton. I'm a pastor in the area. I wanted to see if I could talk to you about your property. He said, yep, my wife warned me that you were coming. I said, well, can I visit with you for a moment? He said, where are you from, boy? I said, well, I'm originally from Louisiana. He goes, Louisiana? He goes, have you ever heard of a guy named Jesse Duplantis? Crazy thing is 20 years before that, when I was 16 years old, I started dating this girl whose dad was a Pentecostal free preacher. And through him, I got exposed to this guy named Jesse Duplantis, who was a Cajun evangelist, who was really funny. Now, I don't think I learned any Bible or theology, but he told the best stories and jokes, and I just didn't even know preachers could be funny. And so I just thought, oh man, he was great. So I just remember all these stories he told, and go off to college and never think about it again. Until now, 20 years later, I'm literally standing in a field and this guy's asking me, have you ever heard of Jesse Duplantis? I said, yes, sir. And I said, I remember a story about him one time. There was a tent revival and it caught on fire. And he goes, yeah. And he finishes that story. And then he said, did you remember the one in Lake Charles where there was a tent revival and then the hurricane came through? And I remember that one. Then we start finishing each other's stories. And he goes, hey, boy, why don't you come walk with me? So we walk over 1 mile through 3 or 4 barbed wire fences, and we get somewhere in this neighborhood, and he goes, tell you what, boy, every day people call me, and they want me to divide my property. I told them all, no, it's only for sale as one piece. But God just told me to sell you whatever you want. What do you want? What do you want to buy from me today? I said, well, what do you think God wants me to buy? He said, if I were you, boy, I'd buy this piece right here. You see that road right there? It's going to be a 6-lane road. Right now it's 2 lanes. It's going to be 6 lanes from 135 to the other 35. This is my best piece. This is what you ought to buy. How many acres you want? And I said, well, how much are you asking, Mr. Bunn? He said, well, for the whole 360, it averages out to 72,000 an acre, but I get double that for this piece. And I said, would you do 70? Because I knew we had 70 in the bank. We could buy 1 acre. And I said, would you do 70? He goes, all right, I'll do 70. How many acres you want to go? 10? And he goes, all right, $700,000, 10 acres. And then Ruth Brock had told me as well, she goes, if you ever get that far, ask them if they want to give additional acreage as a tax write-off. I wasn't real sure what that meant, but I said, all right. So I said, Mr. Bunn, one more thing. Would you consider giving us 6, 7 acres as a tax write-off? He goes, well, I don't know about that, boy. He said, I tell you what, let me pray about that. I'll talk to God, and you call me in the morning, I'll tell you what he says. Now, as a pastor, that's usually the way people tell me no. Next morning I called him, I said, Mr. Bunn, what'd God say? He said to give you 7 more acres, boy. And so we got 17 acres. At today's value would be 25% of the price. And I remember a couple of agents asked me, a couple of real estate agents said, how did you get that property, man? We've been trying to get him to let loose of that for a long time. He said, what'd you do? I said, I'll tell you what I did. I dated a Pentecostal preacher's daughter in high school. That's what I did. You know what? In the providence of God, think about it. We just happened to be there. I just happened to be there at that moment. He was probably in that field less than an hour. Of all the times I'd ever driven by, it just happened to be that God gave me awareness that God ordained in his providence that I would call at that time that he'd be standing in a field. And then we see 3 young men baptized over here today that trusted Christ because God in his infinite mercy, in his infinite grace and compassion has kept us, has blessed us, has let his face to shine upon us and been gracious to us and has given us shalom. That's the goodness of God. That's the God that we serve. One last part here. about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we recognized we were running out of space for students and for some of our children and for special needs. We just didn't have room for special needs anymore. But it was something we felt like God had placed upon our hearts. So we started looking around for a place that we could rent, and we just couldn't find anything. We thought we had one place from the city, but then that didn't work out, and there's just nothing working out. And we just didn't want to be in that position where we tell people you can't come in. We didn't need another auditorium, but we needed that space, particularly for special needs children and even for our children. And so we felt like God just put it upon our heart. And one of the people that was on the committee said, look, I work in the founder system. I'm going to find out if we can get that building for you, because we're moving right next door to you, which we had been renting part of our space to them for a little while just to be good neighbors strategically, because we knew we were going to have to be parking over there because that's what we were doing at the time. And he said, you helped us, so let's see if we can help you. And so he came back and told us the price, which was not expensive considering the market. And so we agreed to buy it, and then we started doing our renovations. And then about 3 or 4 months into the renovations, after we'd locked in all our prices, COVID hit. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, what has happened here? What are we gonna do? We're about to have all this space. Lord, what's going on here? But as you know, time went on, people started coming back, and guess what else happened? Prices started going up. But we had already locked in and already gotten all our materials. And so today we have a facility that's worth about twice what it would have been before. And so we are so thankful that God, again, has shown his favor to us. We have plenty of room for special needs family. We're adding special needs children every week. We now have a college ministry where there are nearly 60 students that are actively engaged in college ministry over there. And we're right between 2 campuses. God continues to bless and show us favor. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you as he's gracious to you, and may his countenance fall upon you and grant you shalom. That is exactly what he's done. Would you turn your attention to the screen?
Our mission is to love God with all that we are while making more and better followers of Christ. And this is a special day for us as we recognize what God has done, the way that he has received people into his kingdom, the way that he has equipped people and sent them out. We are so excited about what God has done, what he's doing, and what he will do.
Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. 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 The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Amen. his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children.
May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you, in the morning, in the evening, and you're coming and you're going, and you're weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 yeah. And
The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give